chapter that is called as human reproduction. So first thing first, in reproduction, what we have to understand that reproduction completes at three major stages. The first is before fertilization. Before fertilization. Because why fertilization is very important? Because the fertilization is the major steps in the sexual reproduction, and in human reproduction there is a type of reproduction takes place in humans that is called as the sexual reproduction. जब भी हम सेक्सुअल रिप्रोडक्शन की बात करते हैं तो सेक्सुअल रिप्रोडक्शन में दो चीजें बड़ी इंपॉर्टेंट होती हैं. पहला, द फर्स्ट इज गैमीट फॉर्मेशन, दैट यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड. हम लोग के सिलेबस से एक चैप्टर रिमूव कर दिया गया है जिसका नाम था रिप्रोडक्शन इन ऑर्गेनिजम्स. ठीक है, तो जितने तरह के ऑर्गेनिजम्स होते हैं उनके बारे में हमको रिप्रोडक्शन के बारे में जो नेसेसरी इंफॉर्मेशन थी वो उस चैप्टर में थी. जैसे कि हम सेक्सुअल रिप्रोडक्शन की बात करते हैं, ह्यूमन रिप्रोडक्शन में ऑलवेज सेक्सुअल रिप्रोडक्शन देखने को मिलता है. इन सेक्सुअल रिप्रोडक्शन देयर इज अ गैमीट फॉर्मेशन टेक्स प्लेस. तो हमेशा सेक्सुअल रिप्रोडक्शन में गैमीट फॉर्मेशन होता है. Gamete is a haploid structure in which only one set of the chromosomes are present, as you have studied earlier. जैसे आपने पहले पढ़ रखा होगा कि gamete formation में haploid number of sets of chromosomes होते हैं, यानी one set of chromosomes होते हैं. इसलिए gamete formation बड़ा important step होता है in the sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction में जो दूसरा major step होता है, वो होता है fertilization. इसलिए हम लोग fertilization को center पर रखते हैं. Fertilization. Okay? So ये दो main event are very important in the sexual reproduction. किसी भी sexual reproduction के अंदर दो major event होने ही होने चाहिए, gamete formation and the fertilization. So if the fertilization is the major step, हम ये देखते हैं कि human reproduction कितने phases में complete होता है. ये मेन 3 स्टेप्स में कंप्लीट होता है. ह्यूमन रिप्रोडक्शन में 3 स्टेप्स में कंप्लीट होता है, जिसमें हम पढ़ते हैं बिफोर फर्टिलाइजेशन. बिफोर फर्टिलाइजेशन यानी फर्टिलाइजेशन के जस्ट पहले जो स्टेप हम लोग इंक्लूड करते हैं, उस स्टेप का नाम होता है गैमेटोजेनेसिस. That means the formation of the gametes, यानी gametes का formation होगा. Gametes का formation हम समझते हैं कि gamete का formation दो टाइप्स का होता है. Gametes दो टाइप्स के होते हैं. Either it is a male gamete or a female gamete. Male gamete and a female gamete. The male gamete is called as, अब हम लोग male gamete को क्या कहते हैं? Male gamete को कहा जाता है sperm cell. And you need to know in human reproduction everything takes place at the cellular level. Human reproduction नाम सुनते बहुत लोग खुश हो जाते हैं, वाह human reproduction पढ़ेंगे. But आपको ये चीज मालूम होनी चाहिए कि human reproduction के अंदर हम लोग हर चीज cellular level पर पढ़ते हैं. तो जब हम male gamete की बात करते हैं तो उसका नाम होता है not sperm, that is called as sperm cell. वो एक सेल है, cellular level पर हम इसकी बात कर रहे हैं. Sperm cell, the formation of before fertilization, the first step is gametogenesis, जिसमें मुझे दो तरह के गैमेट्स बनते हुए दिखाई देते हैं. मेल गैमेट यानी स्पर्म सेल. इसलिए मैं इस प्रोसेस को जिसमें स्पर्म सेल का फॉर्मेशन होगा बेटा हम कहते हैं स्पर्मेटोजेनेसिस. Got it? Spermatogenesis. Got it? And the female gamete is called as the egg cell. Everything takes place at the cellular level. Do remind this point very well. हर चीज cellular level पर हो रहा है. egg cell को कहते हैं oogenesis. Okay, so in the first step of the human reproduction, we will have to see that it is taking place in 3 major steps. That is, fertilization is the main event. So first of all, we have to understand how the gamete formation will take place. That will happen before the fertilization. Before fertilization, the major step is gametogenesis, because there are 2 types of the gametes produced. One by the male gamete. One by the male, that is male gamete, sperm cell, that is called as the spermatogenesis, and another is female gamete, that is egg cell. बड़ी इंपॉर्टेंट बात अब यहाँ जब भी हम गैमेटोजेनेसिस पढ़ेंगे तो हम गैमेटोजेनेसिस में बेटा एक बात बहुत कायदे से ध्यान में रखते हैं. जो एक सबसे ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट बात होती है जो आपको ध्यान में रखनी है, गैमेटोजेनेसिस में स्पर्मेटोजेनेसिस स्टार्ट्स एट प्यूबर्टी. ये दोनों में बड़ा ही डिफरेंस है. एनसीईआरटी की इंट्रोडक्शन वाला पार्ट बहुत सारे बच्चे इसको स्किप कर देते हैं, बट डू रिमाइंड इट बेटा। इस ह्यूमन रिप्रोडक्शन में का एनसीईआरटी के अंदर जो इंट्रोड्यूसरी पार्ट है वहां पर वो साफ साफ कहता है कि बेटा गैमेटोजेनेसिस मेल और फीमेल में बड़ा ही सिमिलर लगता है, बट देयर इज अ वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट डिफरेंस। यहाँ पर बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट डिफरेंस है। स्पर्मेटोजेनेसिस वहां पर वो लाइन लिखी हुई है, वहां पर वो लाइन लिखी हुई है कि स्पर्मेटोजेनेसिस प्यूबर्टी में स्टार्ट होता है और थ्रू आउट द लाइफ, यानी ओल्ड एज में भी होता है। पर oogenesis in the females, because female produce the egg cells, female gamete form the female gamete, oogenesis puberty से पहले ही स्टार्ट हो चुका होता है और एक certain age तक ही हो सकता है। That is the very major point that you have to remember regarding the gametogenesis. That is the first step. The second step is the fertilization. The second step is obviously the fertilization. The fertilization is very simple. What we have to understand in terms of the fertilization. Fertilization के terms में हमको कौन सी चीज बड़ी importantly समझनी है यहाँ पर, वो ये है कि ये किस टाइप का fertilization है। Fertilization is represented by a word called as gamete. एक वर्ड gamete रिप्रेजेंट करता है फर्टिलाइजेशन। हम ये देखते हैं कि ह्यूमन रिप्रोडक्शन के अंदर किस टाइप का फर्टिलाइजेशन होने जा रहा है। The fertilization which takes place in the human reproduction is called as oogamous type. Oogamous. Okay, this type of the fertilization, आप लोगों ने ये पॉइंट अपने प्रीवियस क्लासेस में पढ़ रखा है कि oogamous type का रिप्रोडक्शन फर्टिलाइजेशन किस तरह का होता है। इसमें for the oogamous type of the fertilization there are three major points that it needs to compulsory perform. इस fertilization में तीन steps तो होने चाहिए। पहला, the male gamete जो भी male gamete gametogenesis में बना था, it will be must be motile। इसको क्या होना चाहिए बेटा? motile होना चाहिए and small, और इसको small होना चाहिए। Yes, obviously. So fertilization oogamous type का होगा। Second point. This will be the first step in the oogamous type. Second necessary point for the oogamous type of the fertilization is that the female gamete, the female gamete must be non-motile and large than the male gamete. Obviously, the male gamete is always motile and small, whereas the female gamete must always be large and non-motile. That means if the female gamete is non-motile, then the third step in this oogamous type of the fertilization is must be the fertilization takes place. Fertilization takes place within the sex organ, female sex organ, within the female reproductive organ. Yes, that is very important point. So for the oogamous type, for understanding the oogamous type of the fertilization, there are three major points that you need to remember. That oogamy always ensures the three major steps. The first step is the male gamete must be motile and small, female gamete must be non-motile and large, and the fertilization must take place within the female sex organ, reproductive organ. So this is about the two major steps, that is before fertilization, that is gametogenesis. In these two types, the gametes are being formed, male gamete and a female gamete. Male gamete is called as a sperm cell because everything in the reproduction takes place at the level of the cell. So sperm cell production is called as spermatogenesis, which must take place within the gametogenesis, that means within the male reproductive organ, and the female gamete is called as the production of the egg cell, which is called as oogenesis, and this takes place within the female reproductive organ. And the two types of the gametes, that is the male and a female, are going to fertilize. That is the second step in the process of the reproduction, the fertilization. And the fertilization is always represented by the word gamete, and this type of the fertilization which takes place within the human reproduction is type called as oogamous type. Oogamy. What is oogamy? In oogamy, there are three major steps that must be ensured. That is, the first is male gamete must be motile and small. the female gamete must be non-motile and large, and the fertilization must take place within the female sex organ. So what will be the third step? What will be the third step in the human reproduction? The third step in the human reproduction is after fertilization. After fertilization. So the reproduction completes at the three major steps. The first step is before fertilization, and the second step is fertilization, and third step is after fertilization. What will happen after fertilization? After fertilization, the zygote is being formed. The zygote is being formed. Zygote is going to develop just after the fertilization, and it will take place It will be implanted. So the implantation will take place. What is implantation? The result of the fertilization leads to the development of the zygote, and this zygote must get attached to the female body, and once the zygote get attached into the female body, the zygote develops into the embryo, and the attachment of the zygote into the female body is called as the implantation. So you need to understand this thing very carefully, that in the third step that will take place after the fertilization, the first step is zygote formation, and zygote will develop into the embryo, and once the zygote is developed, it must get the nutrient from the mother body, so it is attached with the mother body, and the mother's body is called the attachment to the mother's body is called the implantation. That is very important step after the fertilization that you must need to know. Once the embryo is formed, there are many developmental stages in the embryo takes place, such as the morula formation, and morula becomes the blastula formation. We will see how these changes takes place after the fertilization. But this time you just need to remember, you just need to understand how these changes takes place. Once the zygote is formed, zygote is the result of the fertilization. After fertilization, you need to understand each and every step very carefully. After the fertilization, the zygote is formed. Either the zygote is get implanted and again it develops into the embryo. So this embryo wants proper nutrition from the mother's body, so that it attaches itself to the mother's body, and this process is called as the implantation. Just after the implantation, the embryo will develop into the later stages such as the morula, and those stages are called as the morula, blastula, and then gastrula. These are the stages: gastrulation, blastula stage. And these development is later developed into the fetus, and this fetus is attached to the mother body with a specific structure called as the placenta, by which the developing fetus into the mother's body gets its nutrition. That is a very important structure. Fetus. The fetus has certain other functional structures we will see. But after fertilization, these processes takes place. Just once the fetus is developed and the fully formed fetus is developed within the mother's body, during this particular period is called as the gestation period. The gestation period in human beings is about 9 months. Just after the 9 months, whenever the gestation period is being completed, the parturition will take place. What is the parturition, sir? Parturition is childbirth, labor pain. The fully formed fetus is now being ejected from the mother's body. That is a very important step takes place after the fertilization. That you need to remember that the human reproduction completes in the 3 steps, and you learn by heart that each step by step there is a certain changes that takes place within the body of a male and a female. Because in human reproduction, the human reproduction is always takes place sexually. in the sexual reproduction, there are two major important things that must need to happen. That is the gamete formation and the fertilization. So we have to understand this human reproduction in three steps. Before fertilization, what will happen after fertilization? And as I have mentioned earlier, that before fertilization, the two types of the gametes are produced. So where is the male gamete is being formed? The male gamete is formed, the male and the female gamete. One thing very importantly you must remember over here. The formation of male and female gamete, the formation of, mind you, the formation of male and female gamete takes place within the primary reproductive organ. Primary reproductive organ. So there is a question, there is a very important point that comes up now. That what is the primary reproductive organ? Primary reproductive organ are those organs present in the body of a male or a female which are directly associated with the human reproduction. And what is the important event in the human reproduction? That is the gamete formation. So the organs, the reproductive organs which produces the gametes, either in a male or a female, are called as primary reproductive organ. That is a very important point that you need to remember over here. So there are two types of the reproductive organ in male and a female. Because they are directly produce the gametes and they are directly associated with the reproduction process. So in males, the primary reproductive organ is its testes, and in female, the primary reproductive organ is ovary. So the question arises over here, sir, what will be the secondary reproductive organ? How will we categorize it? There is a very simple trick to learn this. Okay, so first you need to know. I'm repeating again and again so that in entire short time of span you need to understand each and everything. I'm repeating it again and again. Before fertilization, the gametogenesis takes place. The gametogenesis is the formation of the male and the female gamete. Male gamete takes place within the male reproductive organ. The male reproductive organ which is associated with the gamete formation is called as the primary reproductive organ because it is directly associated with the human reproduction. The similar thing happens with the female gamete also. The female gamete is produced in the female reproductive organ, and the organ that produces the male and the female gamete are testes in males and ovary in the females. So testes and ovaries are regarded as primary reproductive organ. Now you need to understand, sir, what is secondary reproductive organs? Mind this statement very well, children. Mind it very well. इस बात को ध्यान से सुनिए, ये statement आपके लिए बड़ा important है. सेकेंडरी रिप्रोडक्टिव ऑर्गन को हम कैसे लर्न करें? इसके लिए बहुत ही आपको मैं शॉर्टकट देता हूं कि एक बार फॉर्मेशन हो गया, रिप्रोडक्टिव ऑर्गन का फॉर्मेशन हो गया प्राइमरी, यानी कि मेल और फीमेल गैमेट का फॉर्मेशन हो गया. अब उनके मैच्योरेशन की बारी, मोबिलिटी की बारी है, उनके स्टोरेज की बारी है. उनको स्टोर किया जाएगा, उनको मोबिलिटी प्रोवाइड की जाएगी, उनका ट्रांसपोर्टेशन किया जाएगा और उनको एक पर्टिकुलर प्लेस पर मैच्योरिटी प्रोवाइड की जाएगी. और जहां पर उनकी मैच्योरिटी, उनका ट्रांसपोर्टेशन और उनका स्टोरेज होता है, उन ऑर्गन्स को हम सेकेंडरी रिप्रोडक्टिव ऑर्गन कहते हैं. दैट इज एमएमएस. मनमोहन सिंह नहीं, एमएमएस. I'm sorry, but MMS, that is maturity, mobility and storage. So I'm giving you this statement: the organs which are associated with maturity, mobility and the storage of the gametes, male and female, are regarded as secondary reproductive organs. That is very important to know, that in human reproduction we have to understand that gametogenesis takes place before the fertilization, and in the gametogenesis there are two types of the gametes are being formed. Either through the spermatogenesis the sperm cells are produced, or either oogenesis the egg cells are produced. Spermatogenesis takes place directly into the primary reproductive organ, as well as the oogenesis also takes place within the primary reproductive organ, because the primary reproductive organs are those organs which are associated in the development of the gametes. So testes in the males and ovaries are in the females are the primary reproductive organ, because they produce the male and female gamete. Male gamete is sperm cell produced in the testes. Female gamete is egg cell produced in the ovaries. And again, once the gametes are produced, what we need to do? What we need to do with it? The gametes need to get mature. They need to transport from one place to another. Why, sir? Why will this take place? Because the fertilization takes place within the female reproductive organ. That is the oogamous type. So that the gamete need to transport. So we need certain organs which transport these gametes from male body to female body. So the organs which are associated with maturity, mobility means transportation, and the storage of the male and female gametes is called as secondary reproductive organ. That is very important to know. So that is all about the introductory points that you need to understand about the reproduction. Fertilization is oogamous type, and after the fertilization, the zygote takes place, the zygote will develop. This zygote implant it and develops into the embryo, and in later stages it will develop and form the morula, blastula, gastrula, certain stages, and just after the completion of all the developmental stages, it will transform into a fetus, which is attached to the mother's body for the nutrition, for the removal of their waste products. And once this particular whole time, when the fetus is developing and it is attached to the mother's body, is called as the gestation period. And the gestation period in humans is about 9 months. When the gestation period is over, the parturition will take place, during which the parturition is the process by which the fully formed fetus is ejected by the body, and the childbirth takes place. So there are the certain steps that we need to study in later.